Hey, this is the Bunmom Life with me, Jessie, and my 3 buns, Rue, Linus, and Timo. You may know us from our Instagram account, Little Loppy Rue, and we're here to share with you our journey as a bun family. Let's hop to it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you all have had a wonderful start to your new year. Thanks so much for joining us again. Today is a topic that we often get asked about, which is, what do we do when we travel and the bunnies need to stay behind? Bundad and I are big travelers. We love flying to different places in the world, and in 2023 alone, we've traveled 3 times. And each of these trips were about 2 weeks long. And as much as we would love to bring the bunnies along with us, that's just not possible. So what do? That's what we're going to talk about in detail today. The first trip we ever went on after having bunnies was back in May of the year 2022. That was when we had both Rue and Linus, and that was when the pandemic restrictions were lifted and we were allowed to travel again. Prior to that, we went on local trips, booking cottages around our province, bringing Rue and Linus along with us, and those were awesome. We'll definitely share those stories of our cottage trips with the Bun Buns in another episode. So in May 2022, we went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and that was the first time we were away from Rue and Linus. And it was hard. We missed them like crazy, especially when we were going to bed and we didn't hear the sounds of their little paws running around in our home or have them jumping into the bed to snuggle up with us. I think that's one of the biggest torments of traveling. It's being away from our fur babies. And every trip since then has been the same. I don't think you ever will miss them any less. So today I'll be sharing about how we prepare for these trips, how we prepare for the Bun Buns to be home without us, who takes care of the bunnies while we're away, and how we equip the ones watching over them while we're gone, how we prepare for any potential emergencies that may come up, and there are differences to this entire process when it was Rue and Linus compared to when it was Rue and Timo. I even have some stories from our bunny sitters that I'm so excited to share with all of you about what they enjoy about bunny sitting, what was challenging for them, and some memorable stories from their time with Rue, Linus, and Timo. So let's hop right in. We are very lucky because we have some incredibly reliable loved ones around us who we completely trust with our bunnies and with our home. They may not be that experienced with bunny care, and they've never had bunnies of their own before, but they're very detail-oriented, they're super observant, which is so key when you're telling them what signs to look out for if the bunnies happen to be unwell. They're also very responsible, they're self-sufficient, which is great, and they're problem solvers. So that's also very important because if something comes up suddenly and a decision or action needs to be made quickly, they can jump in right away to solve the problem. And just as important as all of these, if not more, they love our bunnies. So who are our bunny sitters, you may ask? Well, we have a very loving church community surrounding us who we really consider as family. And many of us have known each other for many, many years. I think more than 15 years. So we've been through many different stages of our lives together. We went to school together, we graduated together, we grew up together. So we trust these people completely. And last episode, you heard about one of them, the Bun Bun's Auntie J. And our other regular bunny sitters are Auntie Al and Auntie Am. I had to use the first 2 letters of their names because they both start with A. We have a little roster of bunny sitters. And our bunny sitters actually live in our homes for the entire time that we're away. That's right, they pack a little suitcase of what they need, they come over, and they live and sleep here. This is huge for us because we don't need to worry about transporting the bunnies somewhere else. And this helps not just us, but the bunnies themselves. We don't have to worry about them going through so much change all at once. So even though bun parents aren't home and these other people who they don't know very well are, at least the rest of their environment is what they know and what they're used to, which lessens any stress that they might feel. Since the bunny sitters so kindly agreed to stay over, we always tried to have 2 of them come over, which is not always possible though, as you will hear later, so that they can help each other out. Nobody's alone, and if anything happens, there are 2 of them. And this was especially helpful when it was Rue and Timo, since they were separated and needed to be swapped daily. So from our pool of bunny sitters, they take turns coming over and taking care of the bunnies when we're away. We do realize how incredibly fortunate we are to have people we trust and people who are willing to actually live in our home for the weeks that we're away and take care of our bunnies. We know that not everybody gets to do that, so we are very grateful that we have this. And because of that, we do our best to prepare our home to welcome them the best way that we can. Everything gets cleaned and washed. Fresh and clean bed sheets and linen are put in place. We have guest towels, although our sitters have always just preferred bringing their own. We ask for their grocery requests in advance so we can purchase everything that they need and have it all in the fridge and in the pantry. And we ask if they need anything else that'll make them feel comfortable while living here. We always offer to cover the costs of all their meals and groceries while they're here. And we have 2 sets of keys for our condo, so we give each of the 2 bunny sitters who are staying 1. We're so grateful for all of them. We always give them a gift at the end, not nearly worth in terms of monetarily the amount of time and work that they put in, but a gesture of our gratitude nonetheless. We have no idea what we'd do if we didn't have these amazing friends to help out. Well, we know there's bunny boarding that's offered at both of the vets that we go to. I don't know how much it costs, probably a pretty hefty amount, but it is, I guess, a great option to have as a backup just in case. And if you have a bunny that, is similar to Timo, who had lots of health issues and would have to regularly make trips to the emergency, having your vet be the boarding place for the bunny may alleviate a lot of worries and concerns because you know that if anything were to happen, your bunny's in good hands and they would catch it right away and they could treat him or her right away. So there is a benefit to boarding with your bunny vet if that is an option and if it's feasible financially. A lot of work goes into preparing our friends to bunny sit, especially the first time ever for any of them. Since none of them have had pet bunnies before, we definitely needed to be as thorough as possible with teaching them and helping them feel confident and comfortable and as ready as they could be. So from the very start, I put together what I have named our Bunny Sitters Manual. Yes, it's a literal manual. We have the Rue and Linus Bunny Sitters Manual and the Rue and Timo Bunny Sitters Manual, and I'll share more about these manuals in a bit. We also would have our designated bunny sitters come over prior to each of our trips, where we would do a rundown and review of everything with them in person, so they can see how to do things if we needed to demonstrate anything. For example, administering meds to Timo, or swapping Rue and Timo at that time, or demonstrate non-bunny related things around the house, how to use the washing machine, where to put things, etc., or answer any questions that they may have. The amount of time that our bunny sitters put into preparing for bunny sitting and then bunny sitting itself, we really couldn't thank them enough. They just care so much about the bunnies and want the best for the bunnies and want to do a good job. It's just really, really nice that they do it out of the goodness of their heart. So you'll hear me say quite a bit throughout today's episode about how thankful we are for our bunny sitters. Okay, the Bunny Sitters Manual. I love this thing. As I mentioned, we have the Rue and Linus Manual and the Rue and Timo Manual. The former is 9 pages long, and the latter is 11 pages long. I know, it sounds crazy, right? But it also includes pictures, so that takes up a lot of space. And it even has a table of contents. Yeah, we're pretty serious about our bunny sitters training process. I'm going to read all the headings in our table of contents. The 2 are slightly different. For Rue and Linus's Bunny Sitters Manual, the table of contents contain the following. I'll list out the topics first, and then if needed, we'll go into more detail about some of the sections later. So, Rue and Linus's manual, we have the bunny's daily schedule, feeding routine, the bunny's hay, chew toys, litter box maintenance, restricted areas, cleaning supplies, if the bunnies start fighting, health notes, and emergency contacts. So those were the headings in our table of contents. Now for Rue and Linus, in terms of the section that says if the bunnies start fighting, this was just a precautionary section for if Rue and Linus ever happened to fight suddenly, which actually for the entirety of their time bonded together, it only happened once during spring fever. And that was something we learned that was new. So around the time of spring, apparently bunnies' hormones start to go a little wild, even if they are fixed. And it can sometimes lead to elevated aggression, more territorial behaviors. And that was the first time we saw Rue and Linus fight. Even when they were in the bonding process, they didn't fight. But spring fever came along and those claws and teeth came out. Thankfully, it was just for that day. And then we had separated them with the fence, gave them some time apart, and then put them back together and they were fine. And then we just closely monitored. And then it never happened ever again. Other than that period of spring fever, they were never aggressive towards each other. It was very interesting and a good learning experience. Okay, so that was Rue and Linus's manual. Now this is the table of contents for the Rue and Timo manual. Bunny's daily schedule, feeding routine, bunny's hay, chew toys, litter box maintenance, restricted areas, cleaning supplies, health notes and emergency contacts, and Timo's health, with subsections as Timo's diet, Timo's behavior, Timo's medications, taking Timo to the vet in an emergency. We tried to make the manual as comprehensive as possible without being too overloaded with information. You might be chuckling at that. 11 pages? Not too much info, really? I know. And the manual gets updated and adjusted as time goes on and things change. So if we realize we need to add something, or the bunny sitters helped us to realize we should add something in more detail, for example, then we will make those changes. Of course, when Timo came along, we needed to add much more info about his health condition, his episodes, and what to do if something were to happen. We'll share more about how we prepared our sitters for bunny sitting a bunny like Timo, who had so many health issues and scary lapses, a little later on in this episode. For other things that we prepare, we always ensure to order extra chew toys, enrichment toys, and forage in advance. And we make sure that there's plenty of hay in stock as well. Bunny sitting Rue and Linus was definitely a lot more straightforward and simple than when Timo came along. So the process of teaching our friends how to care for Timo was, I think, quite intimidating for them. You know, with Rue and Linus, they didn't have to worry about much since those two were bonded and also didn't have any health issues or meds that they had to take. So they were a pretty easy pair to bunny sit. But since Timo's episodes were so regular and we were traveling often, he would usually have had a lapse either right before we left for our trip or right after we came back. So that always caused a lot of stress. Thankfully, he didn't ever have an episode while we were away, but it did mean that he would still usually be on his rounds of medications. And so our friends needed to learn how to pick up Timo, how to administer those meds to him. Not easy and quite scary for someone who has never had bunny experience before. So kudos to our bunny sitters for learning how to do that and braving themselves and taking such good care of Timo. What made it slightly less challenging was that Timo was a pretty easy bunny to pick up. He doesn't really fight. He doesn't run away all that much. He kind of just sits there and then surrenders. He kind of doesn't even bother fighting, so it wasn't hard to scoop him up when we needed to. Now, on the other hand, if it was Rue who needed to be regularly handled, that would be a daily workout. That girl runs like mad and she does not give in. She will not make it easy for you. And if you're not confident when you pick her up, if there's any sign of hesitation or nervousness, she knows, and she'll immediately take that to advantage and fight her way out of your arms. So actually, for a long time, it was really hard for Bun Dad to pick up Rue. Only I was able to do it. Bun Dad was so much more nervous about accidentally hurting her or doing something that she wouldn't like. And so he was always quite hesitant when he went to pick her up. And she sensed that immediately and took full advantage of it. So it was always a lot harder for Bundad to pick up Rue to get, her nails cut or her grooming done. And it would often fall on me because I got used to it a lot quicker and became a lot more confident pretty early on. So that's Rue. Thankfully, Timo, who needed to be regularly handled, was quite easy to handle. We had to teach our sitters what to do if Timo fell ill, which was a very real possibility for him. And this was always what we worried about the most while we were away. We had informed our vet in advance, letting him know that we would be away. An amazing thing that they did for us was to allow us to sign a form indicating that our bunny sitters were given permission to bring Timo in for any health issues and make payment with our card for any treatments or stays that would be needed. The vet and our sitters, of course, had our number, and they would know to always call us first if anything was needed. And let's say if Timo goes into the hospital and they needed to perform some procedure that would increase the costs, they would have checked in with us first for approval. But if somehow they couldn't reach us because of time difference or lack of reception for us, because, for example, when we were in Nepal at the beginning of 2023, we did a 5-day mountain trek. And so in the mountains, we had no reception. In anticipation of things like that, we gave both verbal and written approval that they could do what they felt was best for Timo and just charge it to our card. Our bunny doctor already knew Timo so well and knew his condition and also knew us very well and our approach to Timo's care, which was literally we would pay for everything and anything if it could help him. So that made things easier, and since the vet knew that we'd pretty much approve anything if it would benefit Timo's health in any way, we basically gave him the reins on what he thought would be best for Timo. And our vet is great. We fully trust him, and we trust that they wouldn't take advantage of us or give our bunnies anything that wasn't necessary just to, make more money or something like that. So we were very comfortable with this arrangement. We also made sure that any extra medication for Timo would be on hand, just in case he needed more to carry him over until we returned. And that's to avoid potentially having another episode while we were gone. Despite doing as much as we could and everything we could to arrange for the time when we're away, it was definitely still a big burden on our minds and our hearts, having to leave Timo when his health was always so up and down. But our bunny sitters were phenomenal and such incredible sources of support, and they did an excellent job taking care of Timo, giving him all his meds that he needed, and handling him with the utmost care. We'll always be grateful because they all willingly did that for us, not expecting anything in return. And thankfully, Timo never had to make a visit to the vets while we were away. So despite his episodes being approximately every 2 months, they actually would end up falling, like I said before, either immediately before or immediately after our trips. Definitely still stressful for us, but not more than if he were to have an episode while we were gone and we couldn't be here for it. One very important request that we always have for our bunny sitters is to send us photos and videos daily. We always miss them like crazy, especially during any downtime that we have when we're not adventuring about, and especially at night when we've settled in for bed. It makes us really happy to look through what the bunnies did that day with their aunties and how they were at home. It also helps to alleviate a lot of our worries about how they're doing. So I mentioned that for the most part, we always try to have 2 bunny sitters here while we're gone. And Auntie Jay is most of the time one of the 2 bunny sitters. Because she works from home, it also makes it a lot easier because she can look after bunnies during the daytime when the other bunny sitter's at work, and then they can kind of swap duties and take turns. So that's really great. But that's not always doable. And there was one trip last year at the end of May 2023 when all of us, except for one of the aunties, went away on a trip. So Bun Dad's sister was getting married in Costa Rica, and so Bun Dad and I were gone. And because two of the aunties were also very close with Bun Dad's sister, then they were also invited to go. And it ended up that of our roster of bunny sitters, only Auntie A was able to stay behind and take care of our bunnies. So she had to be here on her own with Rue and Timo. And that for sure was challenging because, again, of Timo's condition. And she did share her experience with us, so we'll share with you what she said a little bit later on. I've spoken in quite a bit of detail about how we arrange everything for when we travel. So now it's time for some stories of the bunnos from when we've been away. And since having the bunnies in 2020, we have traveled quite a number of times. Not during the pandemic, but once things started to really open up in 2022. From between 2022 till now, we've gone on about 5 trips, I believe. And we have some stories. So stay tuned, keep listening to hear them. I mentioned that the first time we traveled while having bunnies was when we went to Hawaii in 2022. That doesn't sound so long ago, but when I say 2022, it literally feels like several lifetimes ago. So much has happened since then. Anyways, Bun Dad and I had gone to Hawaii for 11 days to celebrate our wedding anniversary. And that was when we still had Linus and he and Rue were bonded. So like I said, bunny sitting was super straightforward and simple. And bunnies are such routine-driven animals. So even with new people in the house taking care of them, Rue and Linus still happily went through their day, eating breakfast in their tent, unstacking their cups for pellets, foraging, and so on. We call all of our friends the bunnies aunties, since all our bunny sitters are pretty much family to us. And the aunties had so much fun with Rue and Linus. This was their first time staying with the bunnies. Rue and Linus were their usual happy, silly selves. But one thing that did happen during that trip was that Linus started to pee in our bed. Rue and Linus were fully potty trained, and we rarely ever had issues with them not using the litter box. And Rue and Linus every night would hop into our bed to snuggle at our feet while we slept, and we've never had an issue with them peeing in our bed, which I know oftentimes bunnies do that. They like to pee in the bed or pee on the couch, but Rue and Linus didn't do that. During our trip, however, Linus did start to pee in bed, which caused our bunny sitters some hassle because they then had to throw the sheets into the laundry every time it happened. But I think it happened about twice during their stay, and we're guessing that it was because of the new people in their home and all the new smells, and maybe little Linus just felt he needed to mark their territory again and ensure that these aunties knew that this bed belonged to him and Rue. So this marking of territory behavior only happened during that trip, and then once again during our most recent trip in September when we went to Turkey. And this time it was Rue and Timo, and they went on a pooping spree. So they didn't pee everywhere, but they pooped everywhere. We were so shocked by the amount of poop we were seeing in their daily photos and videos that aunties would send to us. Rue was not that territorial on previous trips when we were away, but this time she went a little nutso with the poopo. But I'm guessing it was because Timo was being super territorial with his aunties, and since he was laying the poops everywhere, it triggered Rue because Rue wanted to ensure that Timo knew that she is the boss of this place and not Timo. Rue already knew that the aunties knew, but Rue needed to make sure she drove home that point for Timo. It was all very interesting. And then as soon as we returned and aunties were gone, all the territorial pooping stopped. Like a switch. Fascinating, huh? And what's interesting is that before bunny sitting, our aunties would always find it so bizarre and a little bit gross that we would handle our bunnies' poops so often without a care. And that's because, bunnies' poops, as you know, is pretty dry. It's just round balls of hay pretty much. So it's not like smushy and wet and smelly or anything. So we have no problems handling them, picking it up, putting it into the litter box for the few strays that fly out when they are pooping in the litter box and happen to jump out last minute and the poop flies out. But at the beginning for the bunny sitters, they're always a little hesitant to touch the poops. And I remember that a couple of them would use a tissue paper to do it in the beginning. Later on, everyone gets used to it. They realize, oh, the poops are not as gross as we thought, and everybody's unfazed with touching the bunny's poops. And thank goodness for that, because if the bunny's poops were like cat poops or dog poops, and they were pooping everywhere, that would not be a fun experience at all. All right, so we asked our bunny sitters to share with us what they enjoyed the most about bunny sitting, what was challenging about it, and also any memorable stories that they wanted to share with the community. I have responses from Auntie J, who you all know as our master DIY crafts auntie, and also Auntie A, who is also a very regular bunny sitter for us. So let's hear from them. Well, they're not going to be speaking, unfortunately. You'll still be hearing my voice, telling you their answers. I hope that's okay. So for Auntie J, what she enjoys the most about bunny sitting is getting to interact and play with the bunnies. I can pet them and stare at them to my heart's content, or until they have enough of me and run away. Something challenging about bunny sitting, Auntie J said, was having to switch the two buns. So that was when it was Rue and Timo, and they would swap them regularly because they weren't bonded yet. Having to give Timo meds. Catching him was difficult at first, and then afterwards having him be scared of her constantly as the picker-upper person. So Auntie J was the designated picker-upper of Timo, while Auntie A would administer the meds once Timo was picked up and put onto the table. So Auntie J kind of became the bad guy for Timo. And Timo would hide from her, run away from her when he saw her come into his space. But sweet Timo would still loaf and let her pet him, so he wasn't completely scared of her. One story that Auntie J would like to share. So this was from bunny sitting Rue and Timo. And she says, I was trying to pick up Timo for meds by myself while Auntie A was busy in a call, thinking, I can do this. Well, that was a disaster. He kicked his way out of my arms, and I panicked because Rue was just in the bedroom. I was trying to not have them see each other, otherwise there'd be chaos. But somehow Rue sensed Timo escaped, then she tried to run after him and catch him. It was utter chaos. Then Auntie A noticed the commotion and ran out, saw the disaster, and eventually managed to catch and return Rue to the bedroom while we got Timo back into his space. Not ever doing that myself again. Here's another story that Auntie J would like to share. When Rue hopped onto the bed in the early morning at around 4 a.m., it startled me but amused me to watch her explore and have her constantly booping me. Probably trying to say, it's time for breakfast or early morning snacks. I think Auntie A was still dead asleep. That's Rue. Rue likes to stick to her routine, and she doesn't like when people are late, so when it's time for breakfast, she will hop into the bed and boop you. Rue has definitely developed more patience as she matured, and nowadays she's not as adamant. I think it's more so that she just trusts that breakfast will come. She's a cutie. Okay, let's see what Auntie A has to share. What she enjoyed. I enjoy just looking at them and petting them. See Rue stuffing her whole head into the hay bag, munching away, drinking water with their little tongues, and cleaning themselves, turning into a pancake when you pet them. Just so cute. And what was challenging? When I had to catch Timo from medications or when he escaped his enclosure, that was challenging. Thankfully, it didn't take long to catch him, maybe because of all the obstacles in his way, but he would escape from your arms if you didn't hold him tight enough. I would worry that if he fell, he would get hurt because they're not cats that always land on their feet. And when I had to pick him up and accidentally grabbed his legs, I immediately thought, what if I fractured his legs? And then I had to let go and try to catch him again. Yes, picking up bunnies, not always easy. And I think sneaky little Timo also knew that Auntie A and Auntie J were quite new with picking him up, so sometimes he liked to do sneaky things. But again, overall, it was good, and he did get used to it, so he got easier to pick up as the days went by. And the aunties also felt more confident about it, so that helped too. Thank you so much to Auntie J and Auntie A for sharing with us. We're so thankful to have you both in our lives. Thank you. One of my dreams is to be able to travel the world with my bunnies. If it wasn't such a stressful experience for all parties and such a hassle with flights and bringing bunnies on board, we totally would. But even with those aside, there's still a lot to consider, and we have seriously considered. Like, are there bunny savvy vets where we're going and near where we're staying? What are the climate conditions and would they be okay for the bunnies? Will the place we stay at be safe and easily bunny-proofed? So much. And when Bundad and I travel, we're often moving from place to place because we love seeing and experiencing as much as we can when we're there. So that would be way too difficult to do with bringing our bunnies along. We know. But it's still something I can't stop fantasizing about. So for now, we'll just take them along with us on small little cottage trips within the province where we can just drive a few hours to get to. We haven't done one of these cottage trips in a while, ever since we started traveling out further, out of the country. And we actually only started cottage trips during the pandemic because we weren't able to fly anywhere else. So we'll see. Maybe we'll take Queen Roo somewhere soon. And that is our episode on what happens to our bunnies when we travel. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave us a comment on our Instagram, send us a DM, or email us at thebunmomlife@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you have a wonderful day or afternoon or evening wherever you are. And remember, you are loved and cherished always. Our bunnies send you lots of boops. See you next time. Bye.